everybody, and welcome back to my channel After Dark Coffee and Crime. If you are one of my regulars here, it's always good to see you here with me again and welcome you back. But if you are new, hi and welcome. We are a friendly bunch here when we are in the live chat, so do join us if you are around when we are live. Just to be aware, if we are putting in timestamps in any of the cases, then just be mindful that if you are watching live, the timestamps obviously won't apply, but obviously if we are looking at them in the replay, then I'm able to put them in there. So if I'm talking about something that you might struggle with, that's absolutely fine. You can just divert your ears, go do something else and then come back. But obviously if it is on a replay, then you will be able to skip the entire section. And with all my videos, I do like to give a content warning. This is because obviously we are looking at true crime, so viewer discretion is always advised. And in this case that we are now going to cover, we will, talk a bit about the crime scene, and there are issues of domestic violence in this case. So if this is something that you will struggle with, that's absolutely fine. You can come out of the live, or you can just go and watch a different video. You've obviously got to look after yourself, that's the most important thing, but I do like to just let people know ahead of time what we are covering and what the content may be. So in today's case, I will be looking at the murder of Jessica Patel, who was murdered by her husband, and she was murdered so that he could move to Australia with his gay lover. As with all my podcasts, I do like to just say that the information that I have sourced on the case is information that I've researched on the internet. It can be from books, articles, if there's a discovery I will have looked in there, or court documents, and this is just so that I can bring you the most accurate information of what happened and be able to share the victim's story, as well as giving people the most reliable information that I have. With all the cases, they're not designed to obviously upset anybody that may know the victim, that may have experienced something very similar to this victim. And as I always ask, please do remain respectful in the live chat if we are going, or in the comments section post, because obviously we don't know who's watching, and I do know that people that are connected to these cases do find the podcast and they do watch them, and whatever the events are, the family members who are left behind, they deserve the utmost respect, because obviously they have lost a loved one, or their loved one may have committed a crime, and they may be completely and utterly taken aback by all of that. So please do remain respectful in the chat. So who was Jessica Patel? Jessica was born into a large Hindu community in Leeds, and she once told an uncle that she would take his cancer off him if she could, and that was how her family knew her, that she was this type of girl who really cared about other people. And they said that she had simple dreams, and she was originally obviously from Leeds and lived in Linthorpe in Middlesbrough with her husband, and she was actually a graduate from Manchester University, which she attends in 2002 to 2003, and she does begin a short relationship with Mitesh Patel in 2009, and in 2010 she does then go on to graduate from the university. Jessica really did love her family, and in February 2010 Jessica's grandfather became very ill and he passes away. So of course Jessica wanted to go and visit the family, but at this point Mighty Patel refuses to let her return home to go and stay with her family. So we know that obviously she'd had that short relationship with him previously, but they actually married in 2009, and it was then said that things were becoming clear, that things were not quite right with their relationship. And Jessica's sister Manel said that all she ever wanted to do was to fall in love and have a family of her own and live happily ever after. Jessica was voicing concerns about her husband, and he was spending lots of time on his phone, and he would walk out of the room if she came in while he was on it. And she sort of said she knew it wasn't right, and that he took his phone everywhere with him, even into the toilet. Now, I don't find that particularly unusual, because I take my phone literally everywhere I go, and I take it into the toilet because I like to, just scroll through. So again, that's not completely unusual. And she didn't know his passcode to check who he was talking to. So that's kind of a grey area with people, because, some people, don't care if their partners know their passcode, and some do. And is there a reason why people do? I don't know, but she didn't have that access to his phone. In 2010 to 11, Jessica has her job, and she's working at a pharmacy in Bradford, and she actually discloses to one of her colleagues that she's actually concerned that her husband is gay. And although she is voicing concerns during her marriage to people as she's going along, she did suffer a lot in silence. There was a lot she didn't say. And then she became very, very well aware that her husband was in love with another man, and she knew he was also having casual sex with strangers, that she found him to be meeting out, or found out that he was meeting them on the Grindr app. Then in 2012, it really was having a huge toll on her, and Jessica confides to her cousin, and they were on holiday when she did this, and she was saying, that he was spending a lot of time speaking to another man on the phone. During the relationship with Mitesh, he does become abusive, and he begins to hit Jessica, and she discloses as well to someone in her family that he hit her in the car. And in 2018, Jessica's sister actually talks about a conversation where Jessica had said how Patel had put his hands around her neck. So the violence escalates from, hitting her to actually putting his hands around her throat and strangling her. And I believe, from what I've read, obviously this escalated and it became quite bad. In December 2012, so we go back a little bit, Jessica's sister does find an intimate conversation between Patel and his lover, and the couple then move in 2013 to 14 into a place called Middlesbrough in the UK, and this is, I believe, and it's been said by her family, to isolate her from them. And we know in cases of domestic abuse that the abuser will try and isolate their victim. They do take them and move them to places where there is nobody that they can have contact with easily. And he could have been aware that she was starting to figure out his secret, and obviously by isolating her, this would stop her from disclosing his secrets or his sexuality, because obviously within that religion as well, that's seen as, something that they would shun him for. And this wouldn't be the way he would want to come out of the relationship, it would be very bad for him to end his marriage to Jessica to then go into a relationship with a male. So we do know that isolating people is massive, and a lot of the domestic violence, if they can't isolate them, if the families are close, they will stop them seeing their family, or they will move them. Further into their marriage, the couple purchase a lease on a pharmacy, and he lies about Jessica being pregnant with twins during the time that they have their pharmacy, and because they were having problems conceiving, and obviously this was very stressful for them, so I'm not sure why he lied. It just said that was what he did, and that was found out. But they did have problems conceiving, and what we then come to learn is that Mitesh is actually taking drugs to reduce his sperm count. Obviously, they own a pharmacy, so he has access to medication, albeit I imagine that's highly illegal that a pharmacist takes medication out of his own pharmacy. I'm sure that kind of thing would be highly regulated, but we don't know why he lied about her being pregnant with twins. I don't know if that was like for an ego boost, but he lies. Then in April 2016, Jessica actually reports to her GP that she feels under pressure to conceive, and the GP sends her for cognitive behavioural therapy. Now, this is a point where the doctor should be asking, I believe, questions about whether or not she is having issues with domestic abuse, because the fact that she has said that she is feeling pressurised to get pregnant would warrant that question, I think. And actually, after a review of the case, it was recommended that if a patient does come in with similar issues or depression, mental health, a doctor should ask the question, because it's research shows that women who experience domestic abuse are going to have mental health issues, and they are going to show little signs as they go. And actually, from what my training on domestic violence from my midwifery days, we know that it takes many conversations before they will actually admit it. So even if on that occasion she denied it, the next time could be the time that she declares that's happening, or it could take 5 questions and then she could declare it. But we know that obviously she wasn't asked that question, so she didn't have that opportunity to open up to the doctor about what was happening. Now, they do continue trying to conceive, and during this whole time she is experiencing more abuse, and she's obviously isolated from her family. And like I said, the abuse starts to escalate, and other abuse reported from him included him, he started to shout at her in front of their colleagues and customers in the pharmacy. He threw her phone at her. In 2016, the GP then does prescribe medication for anxiety and depression, and at this point, again, she could have been asked the question. You can see why she is anxious. You can see why she is depressed. I can't imagine how it's kind of feeling for her. They're trying for this baby. She's not getting pregnant. She's being abused. She's being belittled in front of people. That is a lot of stuff happening to someone. And the GP then still doesn't ask if domestic violence is a problem. And it is important to take the time to ask victims, and this should be something that they are trained on. And I know nurses and midwives are, so I would expect that the GPs are. But as I said, that came out in the report that that's what should happen. And I hope that that is something that they do now. During the relationship in 2017, pharmacy colleagues were reviewing CCTV, and they actually see Mitesh kissing and groping another male, and they also uncover at this point that he is taking medication to lower his sperm count. But the couple, they continue with their IVF journey, and I'm assuming that Jessica isn't aware. And Jessica was then going through IVF, and they went through 3 unsuccessful rounds. So that again is, him taking the medication to lower his sperm count, knowing that, and then getting her to go through IVF. That's cruel, because IVF isn't easy, and it takes, again, a lot out of you, especially when, she will have wanted to have a baby, to then not fall pregnant. That's an emotional roller coaster. Then Jessica does have a successful IVF round, and they actually have 3 embryos, and they are frozen. And obviously Jessica will have been over the moon with it. Like, this is what they wanted, and certainly what she wanted. But sadly, Jessica was never going to get the embryos implanted and never be able to try for a successful pregnancy, because it was Mitesh's plan all along to obviously it seems odd to me that he'd take stuff to lower his sperm count, but he actually wanted the embryos for him and his gay lover so that they could try for a baby with obviously a surrogate. So she never got to use those embryos, and this was because she was murdered by suffocation by Mitesh, and in his mind he had access to those embryos and he had no more use for his wife, and he actually brought forward his plans to murder her. So from what I've read, the embryos are still there now, and they lie frozen in a clinic in Darlington, and it's just horrible knowing that those embryos were there and she'll never get to use them. Leading up to the murders, Patel became increasingly detached from reality. He was using the online gay dating apps, and he did that to avoid the mundaneness that he felt in his relationship and his job at the pharmacy, although the pharmacy was successful. He was also planning on how he was going to kill Jessica, and obviously when the police do their investigations, they found that the computer searches he'd done included things like, I need to kill my wife with an insulin overdose, plots to kill my wife, do I need a co-conspirator, and hiring a hitman in the UK. After working late at the pharmacy on the night of May the 14th in 2018, Jessica returned home at around 7:10 p.m. As she walked through the door, she was then attacked by her husband, who forced a Tesco bag over her head to suffocate her, before then strangling her with such force he broke the bones in her voice box. Jessica did fight back. She scratched his neck. She really fought him to try and obviously stop what was happening. And although she fought him, it took about 20 minutes for him to take her life away from her. So she will have suffered in that 20 minutes, no doubt, because I can't imagine, obviously, if you're not able to breathe, and obviously, he's putting his hands around her neck, it must have been absolutely petrifying for her. Then, After he'd obviously then murdered her, he bound her feet and hands with duct tape. He ransacked the house, and then he took himself off to the local pizza restaurant, where he then texted his wife's phone to tell her he was picking up their order. And I never understand why criminals do things like this, because these are things that the police really look into, and these things get found out, and I don't know, criminals just seem to think that by trying to cover their tracks like that they're not going to get found out, but they ultimately do. Phone history haunts you. It doesn't matter if you delete your phone. We're learning so much on the Idaho 4 case with the phone pinging at different cell towers, and that turning your phone off before going somewhere is even more alarming than if you left your phone switched on. So it's one of those things where people seem to think that they can kind of cover themselves, and they always get caught. So the CCTV footage at the restaurant that he goes to collect the pizza shows him chatting to the staff quite happily as his wife was at home dead on their living room floor. In the minutes that followed her death, my Tasha's phone monitored frantic activity, and this is where it's also clever, and that included picking up that he was running around the house as he'd staged a burglary. He was running up and down the stairs while her phone actually stayed still. So these are all things that obviously not a lot of people would know about, and I didn't know actually that your phone can pick up your activity, and that police would be able to pick up the fact that you're running frantically around the house. So I find that actually really interesting. So obviously during the court proceedings, they heard that on the day he murdered her, he had subdued Jessica, who was just 34. He'd given her insulin. Then he was able to restrain her and obviously strangle her and take her life. The pharmacist's iPhone had a health app on there, and that is what convicted him. And it was thought to be the first one that's illegal, first in the UK, that an app like that was able to help convict him from obviously picking up his movements. So that's really good. That's amazing. That's interesting to know, because that's not the sort of thing that you think of on these apps that you download. So after his arrest, police seized Mytesh's handset, and they downloaded critical information about his movements, and that obviously included the phone, where it went, and it followed his pattern and trail. On the night of the murder, he calls 999 at 8:22 p.m. The 999 call is linked up above, and this is where he calls to say, "I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked." And you can hear him on the call sounding semi-frantic, I guess, and he's put or he was saying, "I just went out to get something to eat and the house was ransacked. She's on the floor, she's got duct tape all over her, and she's unconscious."
Police emergency.
Oh, hiya. I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked.
Whereabouts? What's the address?
We're on number 35, the Avenue in Middlesbrough, Linthorpe.
Right, is that where your wife is now?
Yeah, well, I've just come home. I was just out. I went to get something to eat and see the lads at work and get my laptop. And I've just come home and the house is ransacked. And she's just on the floor. She's got duct tape all over her and she's unconscious.
Right.
Shall I take this duct tape off her?
Can she breathe?
Well, no, because she's
take the duct tape off her then.
Please, can you send someone quickly?
Yeah, I am. Can I take your name, please?
My name's Mitesh.
Okay.
I can't get it off her.
Give me an ambulance, mate. Yeah.
My battery's really low as well, so if I die...
I'm going to get someone straight out, okay?
How long will they be?
I'm going to get them travelling on blue lights, and we're going to get an ambulance straight out as well.
Okay.
Okay. You said is your wife breathing? Can you feel
no,
a pulse?
I can't feel anything. Her hands are really cold.
How long have you been out of the house?
About an hour.
What's your wife called, please?
Jessica.
What's the date of birth?
16/9/83.
Just try and stay calm. Is it Mitesh I'm speaking to?
Yeah, it is.
Listen, we've got police travelling down now. Okay? We've got police travelling down now.
Can you ring my dad, please?
What, sorry?
Can you ring my dad?
Do you want to ring him?
Well, or should I wait for the... I don't know what to do.
Listen, we've got officers on the way to you now. We've got a few units heading towards, okay? Okay, listen, Mitesh. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hang up the call. We've got lots of units heading towards, okay? Ring your dad up. Ring your dad up.
Yeah.
Just stay with your wife. Are there any other people in the house? Have you got any children in the house?
No, we don't have any children.
Right, okay.
Well, we live on our own with the pharmacist at Roman Road.
Right.
My parents live in Halifax.
Right.
Right, I've got the duct tape off her. It was on her legs, right, by her ankles, and on her arms, she'd been tied up. But her hands are really cold.
Are there any marks on her at all?
Well, I can see marks on her neck, like a really dark neck.
She's been tied up by her hands.
Yeah.
And also tape around her legs.
Yeah.
And marks around her neck.
Yeah. She's got like blood on her nose and like stuff dripping out onto the floor.
Right. What position is she lying in at the moment?
She's in the recovery position. I've put her in that already.
Okay. And she's non-responsive.
No, Jess, come on, baby, wake up.
We've got Mitesh. Please listen to me, please.
Baby, wake up.
We've got an ambulance coming. They're travelling on blue lights as well. Okay. And we've got.
Will you ring my dad, please?
There's nobody on scene, is there, Mitesh?
No, there's nobody here. I had a
Nobody.
picture in the house.
Okay. What room are you? Okay, listen. The police are outside. Can you let the police officers in?
It's Jessica.
I'll leave her with you, okay, Mitesh? I'll leave you with the police officers.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't understand why he thought that the insulin wouldn't get picked up either, because there would have been an autopsy. Obviously, he should know that. When police arrived on the scene, my test showed them the ransacked rooms, and again, he claimed that Jessica was murdered by the person that burgled them. Despite his insistence of a break-in, obviously the police know what they're doing, find no evidence of a forced entry into the property, but the family didn't suspect a thing. Comforting him just days after the murder, and her sister recalls comforting Patel, seeing he appeared genuinely upset and he cried into her shoulder. How awful is that, to be comforting the person that killed your sister and you didn't know it, to then find out after. So we know what the motive was. There was a motive for the murder, and it was for him to have free reign with the embryos, and he also was set to claim $2 million from a raft of insurance policies so that he could begin the new life with his gay lover in Australia. But his lies were all undone. The investigators examined his movements using his iPhone and the health app, and he was obviously found guilty and charged with her murder. The Health app uses motion processors in the phone to monitor steps, and if the handset is taken upstairs, it picks that up. And obviously this was able to be used in the court hearing because of the frantic movements that it picked up. And obviously with her phone being still, it helped to obviously debunk what he was saying, and obviously to get him found guilty and charged with murder for the crime. Other evidence that obviously the police were able to use was that after he had returned from buying the food that night, he had gone upstairs and he'd pretended to find his wife's body, and then dashing into a bedroom to actually hide the house's CCTV hard drive into a suitcase full of clothes. Again, the app tracks his steps throughout, and that it was a massive thing that helped obviously put this man in jail where he belongs. Jessica's phone, after obviously what happened, was analysed, and it revealed more evidence of his lies. Research of Jessica's Health app showed the handset move 14 steps at 7:44 p.m, and he'd took it from her body and deposited it outside to make it look as though it had been left out there and dropped by the burglar, and that was obviously him. The police officer picked it up at their front door where it had been left. And according to the domestic homicide review into her death, Mitesh obviously murdered his wife, and they said it was to try and protect his own honour, because, as I said at the very beginning, he believed that being gay could have been the reason not the reason for him to end his marriage, because it just would not have been the done thing within that community. And obviously with him having a gay lover, would have, he would have felt or known he would have been shunned, and so because of that, the murder was actually considered to be an honour killing. 3 days after Jessica's murder, Mitesh was arrested and he was charged. So we know during the trial the evidence was produced, and he was then found guilty, and he was given a minimum of 30 years in prison. And the judge said that this was a brutal attack on a quiet and a gentle woman who was prepared to put her trust and her faith in her marriage with him, despite your behaviour or his behaviour towards her. Following Jessica's murder, work has been underway to learn lessons from her death and the situation to where she ended up being murdered, including more work to examine the signs of honour-based violence, and a review of help offered to diverse communities, and recommendations of urging the Home Office to look at how small family-owned businesses can deal with signs of domestic abuse, because I imagine as well the colleagues and the people that were working in their business, they'd seen, heard things, but obviously never said anything about it. So, and there needs to be support when things like this occur. So in hopefully following obviously this and the trial, the investigation and what they found, that there will be steps in place to, help prevent this happening again. Because it's interesting, obviously normally honour killings are usually more commonly fathers killing their daughters if their daughters don't do what they are expecting them to do, if they sort of begin living in the modern world and they don't think that they should be doing that, or they disobey them, that kind of thing. Honour killings kind of come in there. So it's interesting that although they were married, it's considered an honour killing because obviously of his fear of his community turning their backs on him for obviously for his relationship, which I find interesting even still, because obviously he was going to move to Australia, so he wasn't going to see his family obviously in Australia. I mean, maybe he just wanted to have contact with them, I don't know. But that wraps up the case for today. It's a shorter one today, but it was a very interesting one, and it's so sad that Jessica never got the life that she wanted for herself and her marriage, and she never got to have the children that she really wanted to have. So that is all for now, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Bye everybody, bye!